At this point, you should know that the Panchu family, Claude, his wife Silvia, and their kids were not the only ones scared. Since that day, their dog became dull. He would spend all day looking at the wall, as if he were seeing something that other people couldn't. Even when the kids wanted to play with him, he would growl at them and go back to staring at the wall. Claude decided to be patient with the dog. If the same behavior persisted, he would take him to the vet. And of course, it did. So they took him. The vet said that the dog was totally fine and had no illness, explaining that animals sometimes exhibit weird behaviors, but it would eventually fade away. Now, the frequency of events would change the Panchu's family's life, leading them into a spiral of paranoia that kept increasing. The strange occurrences in their house wouldn't stop. In fact, they would develop further. What you will hear now is mind-blowing, making a person lose grip on every logical thought. One day, Silvia noticed a wet spot dripping from the ceiling. She was a little shocked. Where did this humidity come from? They had lived in the house for 8 years, and they had never seen anything like that. Each year, Claude would check everything around the house, fixing whatever needed to be fixed and repairing what needed to be repaired. The firm responsible for maintenance would give him a 1-year warranty. What confused Silvia even more was that the ceiling was in the basement. Where could that water come from? She was just upstairs, and if a tap had been left open in the bathroom or the kids were playing with water, she would have noticed. She went upstairs again to recheck and reassure herself, but found nothing. The hallway was dry and clean. What was the matter? She grabbed a small ladder and a piece of cloth and climbed up to wipe the spot. Just as she finished, the phone rang. She picked it up and noticed her mother-in-law's voice was not as usual. She struggled to say 2 words before bursting into tears. "What's wrong?" Silvia asked. Her mother-in-law inquired about Claude's whereabouts. She told her that he was not there. He was working. Due to the nature of his job, Claude was always outside, working in the field, not in an office. Silvia pressured her mother-in-law again, asking, "What happened?" She told Silvia that Claude's father had an accident. She had called him, but didn't get an answer. Claude's father was in the hospital, and his life was in danger. What another disaster. On top of the horror, they were now faced with a tragedy. Fortunately, Claude's father survived, but he remained in critical care for a while. 2 weeks later, Silvia found another spot, but this time was on the upper floor, in the room where the drawing table kept hitting the wall on its own. What was strange was that the spot was in the inside corner, not on the outside wall. Silvia told her husband to check it. The house becoming humid would pose a problem for the kids. Claude called the firm, and they came to check the house, telling him that everything was fine. The house was insulated, and there was no reason to have any humid spots. They cleaned the spot thoroughly and waited for a while. It remained dry, so they told Claude that everything was great and instructed him to call them if anything came up. As the workers were leaving, a car pulled up. Silvia's brother and sister came running. When she saw them, she became scared and asked what was wrong. They told her that her father had fallen down the stairs and was in the hospital in a coma. Everything was a mess, but fortunately, he survived as well. To not make it too long for you, a lot of tragedies happened in a short time. 2 of Silvia's relatives died, one in an accident and the other from natural causes. Silvia herself was hit by a car that ran a red light, resulting in a fracture in her cervical spine. According to Silvia, each time a wet spot appeared in the house, a tragedy followed. That spot would quickly disappear when they wiped it away. Things reached a breaking point. As soon as Silvia healed, she sought out a woman named Mireille Thibault, who specialized in paranormal activities and was also a psychic. Silvia told Mireille everything that had been happening. The psychic asked her to bring her to the house, so she could see for herself and conduct her experiments to determine if there was any souls present, essentially to check it if the house was haunted. As you know, psychics have their ways, and many people turn to them when facing problems like those Silvia and Claude were experiencing. After hearing the story, Murray asked Silvia if she had ever experimented with manifesting spirits as a child. Many people know the game where teenagers, kids, and even adults try to communicate with spirits called Spirit, Are You Here? Silvia admitted that she had always been passionate about paranormal activities since childhood, but she was never scared and never thought this would happen to her in this way. She also shared that her interest was particularly in astrology and fortune-telling, and she never considered herself a psychic. When Murray inquired about the extent of her fortune-telling, Silvia explained that she sometimes saw things, but she manifested them herself, and it never happened in such a way. However, she was never frightened, even though she believed in psychic phenomena and fortune-telling. While Silvia sought the help of a psychic, her husband Claude, who wanted to stay reasonable until the last moment, began searching for information through the real estate administration, municipal records, and magazines published in the area. He wanted to see if there was any reports about the house being haunted. So far, there was nothing. The house was built in 1968, and the family that sold it to them in 1980 had resided there. When they bought it, they were not warned about anything. Perhaps they wanted to avoid ruining the deal, but if there was something, it shouldn't have been hidden. Haunted houses tend to become known pretty quickly. The psychic discovered an important aspect of Silvia's personality that might relate to what was happening. Her childhood interest in astrology had developed her imagination and taken her to another world. However, this didn't fully explain what was occurring and was still far from the realm of psychic specialists and spirit summoners. Silvia told the psychic that she had lost interest in astrology and was no longer conducting experiments to explore the future as she used to. But this did not stop the paranormal activities. She mentioned that one day, her son Sebastian felt a weird shiver when she attempted to talk to spirits, and she was worried about him. She regretted doing it in front of him. However, in a few days, she continued to see things while awake. Once, she saw some of her co-workers commit suicide, and hours later, she received the news that he had indeed killed himself. She claimed she saw people who had died years ago walking in front of her as if they were alive, and she could almost touch them and talk with them. To add to the strangeness, Claude sometimes felt that Silvia was completely unconscious, as if she were about to faint. She would also lose items she had placed somewhere and then find them moved, as if someone had shifted them. The situation for the Panchu family extended over 3 long years, from 1988 to 1991, filled with ongoing troubles that left them bewildered about their origins. As tensions reached a breaking point, they decided to bring a whole crew of psychics, hoping they could finally find a solution. However, what they discovered was far more horrific than they ever expected. Murray, the psychic, explained that the team conducted several sessions, trying to communicate with spirits to understand the phenomena in the Panchu family. Unfortunately, these sessions yielded no results. But one day, when Silvia was alone, she experienced a peculiar and overwhelming fear. She heard footsteps pacing back and forth, which soon morphed into indistinct voices, echoing as if from a well or a cave. These voices, chilling in tone, made her body shiver. As the phenomena progressed, Silvia began to see ghostly figures that appeared smoke-like. Gradually, these apparitions merged into one entity, same as the unclear voices she heard. The ghost caught she saw was an old woman, around 80 years old, whom Silvia believed she heard called Cecilia, suggesting the woman's name was Cecilia. When Silvia shared this encounter with the psychic team, they set up video and sound recording devices throughout the house, including infrared cameras to capture footage even at night. Murray was present during this experience and later uploaded copies of the recordings of the eerie voices to her website, seeking to validate that the Planchu family story was not merely a figment of their imagination. To the surprise of the psychics, while they could not see any of the ghosts Silvia described, they recorded the strange sounds, some low and others almost shouty. Although they were unable to communicate with the spirits, Murray quickly deduced that they were likely dealing with a phenomenon known as poltergeist. This term, derived from German, combines poltern, to make noise, and geist, spirit, relating to the manifestation of ghosts and the strange occurrences of noises and moving objects. This phenomenon is often attributed to psychological factors, particularly by the presence of a troubled child in the home. Psychics suggest two types of paranoia, big or small paranoia, which develops around a child approaching adolescence with psychological difficulties, and big paranoia, which is more profound and less understood. According to Murray, this may have caused the spirits to reveal themselves, affecting the household's atmosphere. She advised Silvia to take her son Sebastian to a psychologist, as she believed he was a troubled child contributing to the manifestations in the house. Murray also urged the Planchu family to forget astrology and fortune-telling entirely and to remain together in the house, avoiding any instances of being alone. Months passed, and the advice seemed to work. Sebastian began feeling better and became more stable, and Silvia stopped experiencing visions or hearing the unsettling voices. Gradually, the occurrences in the house diminished, and they no longer witnessed moving objects or strange events. However, just when they thought the nightmare was over, Silvia received a call from her sister one day while organizing books in her home. Her sister claimed to have seen a table in her bedroom moving back and forth against a wall. Was this a haunting legacy being passed down to her sister?